Good morning, dear students. We are going to discuss anatomy of spinal cord today. So the neuroanatomy is starting from today onwards. So we have different lectures of neuroanatomy, and the starting lecture we are doing is with spinal cord. The introduction of nervous system has been given in general anatomy, and basically the nervous system is made up of brain and the spinal cord. So when we study the neuroanatomy part, we generally start with the spinal cord, then we go from downwards. We will start, then we will do with medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain, then we will go with cerebrum, cerebellum, and so on. Okay, so let us start with the spinal cord. So generally the objectives of this lecture is we will define like upper and motor, lower motor neurons. We'll give you examples. We will also study about the tracts. Basically, we will study about the anatomy of spinal cord, how does it look and length and everything. So spinal cord is lower elongated part of the central nervous system, which is cylindrical in shape. It is slightly flattened anteroposteriorly. The length of spinal cord is 45 centimeters and the weight is 30 grams. Now, the extent. So it is extending from the first cervical vertebra to the lower border of the first lumbar vertebra. The lower tapering part is conus medullaris. The apex of conus medullaris continues as filum terminale. Okay, so this lower part, cone-shaped area is conus medullaris, and from here you will have the extent of phylum terminale. So now when you see during the embryonic stage, now the positional changes in the cord you can see. So in the embryonic stage, the length of the spinal cord and the length of the vertebral column is same. But as the baby grows, you will see the vertebral column is growing at a faster rate and the spinal cord will stop growing. Hence, you will see the spinal cord is ending at the lower border of L1 vertebra. After L1, whatever you are finding, these are only spinal nerves which are coming out through corresponding intervertebral foraminae. Okay, you can see this is our spinal cord which is ending at the lower border of L1. So from there you are finding only spinal nerves which are coming out. Okay, so positional changes. Third month of intrauterine life, spinal cord is as long as vertebral canal. At birth, spinal cord is lying at the level of L3. In adults, you will see the spinal cord is lying at the lower border of L1. Okay, now in this picture, you are finding like in this slide, so spinal segments, vertebra level and the general rule we are going to see. Okay, then so spinal segments like C2 segment is actually lying at the vertebra level, C2 vertebra, same level. Now see, these are the vertebrae, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. Okay, now this is the cervical part of the spinal cord. This is thoracic part of the spinal cord. This is lumbar part of the spinal cord, isn't it? Then we have sacral and coccygeal part of the spinal cord. Different colors have been shown. So now if you observe this thoracic part of the spinal cord, it is extending only up to T11. If you see, the lumbar part has started from T11 and it has ended almost up to the T12 and L1 junction, isn't it? So that means the sacral and coccygeal part are still higher up. That means still L1 vertebra level, the spinal cord is over, but the spinal nerves, if you remember, we have 8 pairs of spinal nerves, 12 pairs of the thoracic nerves, 5 pairs of the lumbar nerves, and 5 pairs of the sacral nerves, and we have the coccygeal nerve, isn't it? So that means the spinal segment and vertebra level are same only up to the level of C2. But lower cervical C2 spinal segment is lying in the vertebra level C5, one vertebra above. Okay, then. So like spinal segment T5 is lying at the vertebra level T3, that is 2 vertebra above. Lower thoracic T10 spinal segment is lying at the level of 7th thoracic vertebra, that is 3 vertebra above. Then L1 to L5 we have T10 to T11, that means the vertebra level is T10 to T11. whereas the spinal segment level is L1 to L5. Okay, then so that is 3 to 5 vertebra above. Then S1 to S5 and coccygeal 1 spinal segments are lying at the level of T12 to L1 vertebra level. That means it is 6 to 10 vertebra above. So that means spinal segments and vertebra levels are not the same. Pause this slide and you just try to read it for yourself. You will understand better. Okay. Now, see the spinal segments like, of course, spinal meninges. Like brain, we have three coverings. Like from the outer to inner, you will see the outermost covering is dura mater. Middle we have is arachnoid matter. Innermost covering is pia mater. Okay. So the same coverings are extending even up to the spinal cord. Okay. So the spinal dura mater. So the spinal dura mater, which is actually extending from foramen magnum to the lower border of the second sacral vertebra. The space between the spinal dura and vertebral canal is epidural space. Okay, so this is the epidural space which you are finding here. Okay, between the vertebral canal and the spinal dura. So the space in the between the dura mater and arachnoid mater is subdural space. So now there are certain differences between the spinal dura and the cranial dura. So the spinal dura is single layer, it consists of only meningeal layer, whereas cranial dura, we have studied it is a double layer. It consists of inner meningeal layer and outer endosteal layer inside the skull bone. So spinal dura doesn't form any folds, whereas cranial dura, it forms the dural folds, what we have studied in detail. Falx cerebri, falx cerebelli, tentorium cerebelli, and aphtoma cerebri. Then epidural space is absent in spinal dura, whereas present in case of spinal dura, whereas epidural space is absent in cranial dura matter. Okay. And then next coming to the second meningeal covering, that is arachnoid matter. So this is the arachnoid matter, which is thin, transparent, avascular membrane. Above it is in continuation with the arachnoid matter of the brain. Below it is extending up to the level of lower border of S2 vertebra, that is of the sacrum. Then see, this is the spinal cord, blackened part, conus medullaris, which has ended at the level of lower border of L1. Okay, so the pia mater is the last layer, which is very thin and vascular membrane continues below the spinal cord, like it has been shown in red line. So the continuation of this pia mater below the spinal cord is called as filum terminale. Okay, so the filum terminale, which is inside the dura mater up to the level of S2, you call it as filum terminale internum. Further journey of the filum terminale outside the dura till the coccyx, it is called as filum terminale externum. Filum terminale itself can be a 3 marks question, very important. Okay, so filum terminale is nothing but the extension of pia mater. The space between the pia mater and the arachnoid matter is called subarachnoid space, and subarachnoid space, we know it is filled with CSF. Okay. Then, so generally overall length of this filum terminale is 20 centimeters. 15 centimeters is inside the dura, that is the filum terminale internum, and 5 centimeters will be outside. That is the filum terminale externum. Now, there are certain expanded spaces which are generally called as cisterns. So, we have one cistern which is situated at the spinal cord. The subarachnoid space around the filum terminale becomes roomy, and it is a space where we have lot of CSF collection, and we can call this area as lumbar cistern. Okay. And generally, there is a procedure which is called as lumbar puncture. So it is done to withdraw CSF for various diagnostic and also therapeutic procedures. The most preferred site is interspinal space between L3 and L4, so that we do not damage the spinal cord. We know spinal cord is ending conus medullaris at the lower border of L1. So an imaginary line joining the highest point of iliac crest, okay, passes through the spine to of the L4. So see, you can see how this lumbar puncture needle is entering, and it is entering into the subarachnoid space where we have CSF. So the objectives of lumbar puncture to assess pressure of cerebrospinal fluid. We also take this for biochemical investigations. We check the color of CSF. We will see the composition, cellular component of CSF, chemical composition. So in order to check any disease. So drugs may also be injected. So that is spinal anesthesia. Anesthetic drugs act on lower spinal nerve roots and render the lower part of the body insensitive to pain. So lumbar puncture, when we are passing this lumbar puncture needle, so structures through which the needle passes is skin, then we have superficial fascia, then supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament, ligamentum flavum. All these ligaments I have explained when we were doing the vertebrae, cervical and thoracic vertebrae. Then areolar tissue containing internal vertebral venous plexus, then it pierces the dura mater, then arachnoid mater, enters the subarachnoid space where we have the CSF. Then the modifications of pia mater are one thing we have already studied, that is the phylum terminale. Apart from that, we have ligamentum denticulata, linea splendens, and subarachnoid septum. So phylum terminale, which is a delicate white thread-like structure, which is extending from conus medullaris to the first coccygeal vertebra. The length is 20 centimeters. Inside the dura, you call it as phylum terminale internum, which is around 15 centimeters. Outside the dura, it is phylum terminale externum, which is around 5 centimeters. Okay, now this is the subarachnoid septum, which is also one of the modifications of the pia mater. Okay, that is subarachnoid septum, this one. And then connects the dorsal surface of the spinal cord with the arachnoid mater. Okay, then we have linea splendens, which is medial glistening line made up of pia mater. Okay, located on the ventral surface along the anterior median fissure. Okay, that is the linea splendens. Like here in the midline, you will have linea splendens. Then we have tooth-like projections, which this is also very important 3 marks question or 5 marks question. Ligamentum denticulatum or plural ligamenta denticulata. So we have two transparent ribbon-like thickened bands of pia mater on either side of spinal cord, extending laterally between anterior and posterior nerve roots. The lateral margin of each band presents 21 tooth-like processes. Okay, so external features of spinal cord, we have fissures, then we have sulci, we have the attachment of spinal nerves, we will see the enlargements, and we will see the bundle of nerves which are seen at the conus medullaris called as cauda equina. Okay, so the fissures we have here are, this is anterior aspect which is also called as ventral, posterior aspect which is also called as dorsal. When we see the cut section of spinal cord, we have anterior median fissure, also called as ventral median fissure. Then we have posterior median sulcus, also called as dorsal median sulcus. On either side of which we have dorsal intermediate sulcus, dorsal lateral sulcus. Okay. Now, when we see the cut section of spinal cord, we have like anterior horn, also called as ventral horn, then posterior horn. When we take the section at thoracic part, we also find there is intermediate horn. It looks like a butterfly, and this gray matter in the center, it has an opening for the passage of CSF, that is the central canal. And this is all gray matter. Surrounding the gray matter, we have white matter. Okay. Then the spinal nerves, how many pairs of spinal nerves? We have 31 pairs of spinal nerves which are emerging from either side of the spinal cord. The cervical spinal nerves are 8 in number, thoracic are 12 in number, lumbar 5 in number, sacral 5 in number, everything is in pairs, coccygeal is 1 pair. So overall we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Okay. This is one more picture which is showing the cut section of spinal cord. Okay. So the spinal segment, the region of spinal cord from where a pair of spinal nerve is emerging, you call it as the spinal segment. Okay. So when we see the spinal cord as a whole, in the cervical region and in the lumbar region, you will see there is one enlargement. So in the cervical region, it is called as cervical enlargement. In the lumbar region, you call it as lumbar enlargement. So cervical enlargement is intended for the formation of brachial plexus. Lumbar enlargement is intended for the formation of lumbar plexus. Now, the conus medullaris, what we have seen at the level of L1, cone-shaped terminal part of spinal cord. When you see below that level, all spinal nerves will be forming a ponytail. What girls put ponytail, horse tail-like appearance it gives, which is called as cauda equina. So a large subarachnoid space surrounds the phylum terminal internum. Okay, it is the site of lumbar puncture for the collection of CSF. We can also inject drugs in the subarachnoid space. Okay, so basically cauda equina will have all bundle or bunch of nerves which are actually involving L2 to L5, S1 to S5 and coccygeal one. All nerves, they form a ponytail like bundle which is called as cauda equina. Okay, the internal structure I told you, we have gray matter and white matter, okay, which I have already explained. Okay, so this is the cut section of spinal cord which is taken at different levels. This is at the level of cervical, C5 level, T2 level, T8 level, L1, L2. You are finding C level is quite big. That means here we have cervical enlargement. L level is also broad. That means we have lumbar enlargement. Remaining areas, it looks little thinner, isn't it? Now, the white matter is divided into anterior white column and posterior white column, also called as anterior and posterior funiculus, and the lateral white column. Gray matter, we have anterior horn, which is motor, posterior horn, which is sensory, lateral horn, which is autonomous, sympathetic. Then we have gray commissure, which is both in the anterior and posterior. So these are the nuclei which you have already studied in physiology. Here it will be a review for you. Okay, so this is our anterior horn and this is the posterior horn. So the various nuclei what we have is ventrolateral nucleus, dorsolateral nucleus, okay, then retrodorsal nucleus, intermedio, lateral, intermedio, medial nucleus, accessory nucleus and phrenic nerve nucleus, ventromedial, dorsomedial nucleus, okay. Then we have dorsal nucleus and then we have posterior marginal nucleus, substantia gelatinosa, Rolando and nucleus proprius. Now, apart from these nuclei, we can also just cut the sections giving them the names as laminae. So we have lamina of Rex, it is called as. So lamina 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Okay, then we have lamina 8, then we have 9 and surrounding the central canal, we have lamina 10. So this is one more way of showing the laminae instead of nuclei. Okay, then. So in the lamina 1, we have postero-marginal nucleus. Lamina 2, we have substantia gelatinosa. Lamina 3 and 4, we have nucleus proprius. Okay, lamina 5, 6, 7, we have intermediate gray column, Clark's nucleus. Okay, then we have lamina 8, 9th, we have anterior horn, that is the motor neurons. 10th, we have gray commissure. Okay. Then we have different tracts also in the spinal cord. These tracts you have studied in detail in physiology. We have ascending tracts and descending tracts. Okay. So in case if it is asked in anatomy also, the same thing what you have studied in physiology, you can write. The same thing what you study in anatomy, you can write in physiology as well. There is no need to get confused. Of course, tracts are tracts only wherever you study. Okay. So ascending tracts are the tracts which are also called as sensory tracts, which are actually moving from the spinal cord to the sensory area of the cerebral cortex. Motor tracts are actually starting from the motor area of the cerebrum and then it will be descending into the spinal cord and distributed through the motor nerves of the spinal nerves. Okay, motor component of spinal nerves. So we have ascending tracts which are nothing but sensory tracts. So we have spinothalamic, the ascending tracts have been shown in blue color over here. So spinothalamic, fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus, and spinocerebellar tracts. So major descending tracts we have are corticospinal, rubrospinal, and reticulospinal. Now after that, let us study about the blood supply of spinal cord. The blood supply of spinal cord comes from anterior spinal artery, which is 1 in number. Posteriorly, you can see we have 2 posterior spinal arteries. Then we also have segmental arteries. Okay. Then the anterior spinal artery is coming from the vertebral artery. We also have radicular arteries, which are actually coming from the segmental arteries. So these are the branches of vertebral, then ascending cervical and intervertebral and intercostal and lumbar arteries. Venous drainage. So the venous drainage of spinal cord, it goes into longitudinal and radicular veins to intervertebral veins. From there into internal vertebral venous plexus. From there into the venous blood is draining into external vertebral venous plexus. From here the blood drains into segmental veins. Okay. So we have like vertebral arteries and vertebral veins. Okay. Now you can see here, this is the anterior spinal artery. You can see how it is going into the substance of spinal cord, ramifying and supplying it. Okay, so these are the segmental arteries. We have like anterior spinal artery coming as one of its branch. Posterior spinal arteries, I told you we have 2 in number. They are also coming as branches from the segmental arteries. Okay, so this is the cut section of the vertebral column where you are finding spinal cord is passing. Okay, and you can see this is the abdominal aorta. We have intercostal arteries. From the intercostal arteries also we have branches. The segmental branches are going and supplying the spinal cord. Okay, so the blood supply of spinal cord, you can see we have anterior spinal artery, which is 1 in number, posterior spinal arteries, which are 2 in number. Then we have spinal branch coming from the intercostal arteries, as we have shown in this picture. Between the ribs, we have the intercostal arteries. So intercostal arteries are going and supplying the corresponding level of the spinal cord. Okay, then spinal branch coming from the 11th intercostal artery. So branches from vertebral, deep cervical, intercostal and lumbar arteries contribute to 3 arteries that run along the length of spinal cord, the anterior spinal and posterior spinal arteries. Now coming to the anterior spinal artery, so the anterior spinal artery is larger. It is in the midline. It lies on the anterior median fissure. It is formed at the foramen magnum by the union of 2 arteries, one from each vertebral artery, supplies the spinal cord, anterior part, namely lateral columns and anterior gray and white columns. Then posterior spinal arteries, 1 or 2 on each side derived from the vertebral artery. Vertebral artery is one of the branches coming from the subclavian artery. Okay, so sometimes it is coming from inferior cerebellar artery at the level of foramen magnum. Both the anterior and posterior spinal arteries descend from the level of foramen magnum, as you can see here. They are descending downwards. Now, 21 pairs of segmental radicular arteries supply the nerve roots, and about half of them contribute to spinal arteries. Now, the artery of Adam-Quist, the spinal branches, segmental radicular arteries from 1st and 11th intercostal arteries, they are quite large in size. That means at the level of T1 and T11. They pass along the nerve roots of spinal cord and they strengthen the anterior and posterior spinal arteries. Okay. Overall blood supply of spinal cord can come as a separate question, so that I have given an elaborated explanation. Now supplies the lower thoracic and upper lumbar parts of the cord. Then spinal artery at L1, T1, Adams-Quist, supplies the cord only downwards. Then spinal artery at T11, so again Adams-Quist, so supplies the cord both above and below. You call this as radicularis magna. Okay, these are the different picture. Abnormal situations, high takeoff, it may come from the iliac artery branch, supplies the lower thoracolumbar region of the spinal cord, entering through intervertebral foramen of L4 and L5. Okay. So these are the spinal branches. Now the spinal veins. When you talk about blood supply, that means you have to talk about arterial supply and venous drainage. Both are supposed to be written in your answer. So the spinal veins, they are forming plexuses both anteriorly and posteriorly. On each side of the spinal veins, they are double straddling the posterior nerve roots. All of them are draining into vertebral veins in the neck, azygous vein in the thorax, lumbar veins in the lumbar region, lateral sacral veins in the sacral region through intervertebral foramina. Okay, so the venous drainage, we have two median longitudinal veins, two anterolateral, two posterolateral, intervertebral, like internal vertebral, venous plexus. Finally, you will see all venous channel will go to basilar venous plexus. What we have seen with dural venous sinuses when we were doing cavernous sinus, that chapter we have seen in the cranial fossa basilar venous plexus. That means throughout the spinal cord, the venous blood is being collected and finally it is reaching the cranial fossa, draining into the basilar venous plexus. Okay, that is. So that is all about the spinal cord. Okay, we have studied the cross features. Okay, then we have named the tracts and then we have studied the blood supply. Okay, so that's it. So we are stopping here. Thank you.